Finance. He has over 40 years of corporate experience in leadership positions with various public and private sector organizations in the domains of finance, costing, internal audit, legal, and company secretarial functions. He has dealt with mergers and acquisitions, corporate restructuring, anti-dumping duty, and corporate governance mechanisms. Currently, Dr. Gupta is the Managing Director of Registered Valuers Organization of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He was earlier the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the IPA of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. Dr. Gupta has chaired and addressed a large number of national and international seminars and conferences. He is a prolific writer and has written over 200 articles and research papers, which are regularly published in various professional journals. He is currently guiding 5 PhD scholars. He has also conducted management development programs, both open programs and in-house for various companies. As his hobby and passion, Dr. Sunil Gupta is a nice flute player and has released an album of songs and bhajans played by him on flute. Now, in this second technical session, Dr. Gupta will make his deliberation on the sub-theme, Emerging Dimensions of Corporate Reporting. Now, I hand over to Dr. Gupta, please, sir. Sir, unmute yourself, sir. No, it has again been muted, sir.
Good morning and welcome to all the participants, the faculty, the organizers of this faculty development program for inviting me as a session speaker on a particular theme which is very, very relevant in the today's emerging corporate world. And as introduced by Professor Das Gupta, I've spent over 40 years in industry. I've also been a visiting faculty for over 30 years in different B schools and other institutions, and I've almost had a parallel academic career along with my corporate dabblings where I practically handled various situations. So what I proposed and what I thought was that having been given this opportunity to talk to all the very, very learned, knowledgeable faculty members from Pan India, I want to bring about and focus my session on what are the industry awareness required by the students, what are the industry profiling, how the industry structure is changing, what are the changes taking place in the finance domain and also in the corporate reporting domain, so that all of you can accordingly guide the students and prepare them better for conducting themselves in the corporate world after they pass out from the various institutions and get into a professional career. So just give me a second, let me present my presentation on the screen, please. So I'm going to touch upon the changing dimensions of finance and corporate reporting. You would all agree with me that the world is changing, and it is changing at a very, very significant and rapid pace. I'm not only talking about the changes which have taken place during and post COVID-19 pandemic situation, but even otherwise, if you look back over the last 2 or 3 decades across the world, there have been very, very significant changes which have taken place in humanitarian aspects, in corporate aspects, in business aspects, anything and everything there to talk about. There have been very, very significant changes which have taken place in the world. Commonly, we identify that the world that we live in today is a VUCA world, which is highly vulnerable, very, very uncertain, hugely complex, and very ambiguous. And that's why the business world today is very, very challenging. And as faculty members, as faculty mentors, we have a responsibility of preparing our students and providing them the kind of knowledge inputs and also practical orientation and the attitude and mindset to be able to deal with the corporate matters in such a kind of a situation, which is a VUCA world, which is highly vulnerable, very uncertain, hugely complex, and very, very ambiguous. There are changes taking place practically at all levels and in various dimensions in the world. Of course, we all understand how technology has transformed the way we live and work in different organizations. Be it artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, data analytics, everything is so imbibed in the entire functioning of the corporates these days that anyone who doesn't have a hands-on knowledge or who doesn't pick up the required skills in these particular technological areas is probably going to be left behind. So we need to be careful in understanding how technology has transformed by way of Industrial Revolution 4.0 that we are all seeing and witnessing currently in the world as a whole. Technology has significantly transformed the way we live and the work in different organizations. There are demographic shifts which are happening, which are reshaping society and the workforce. We say that China has the highest workforce or highest number of people in the country, the population, but India, as we commonly understand, has a demographic dividend. That's because in terms of sheer numbers, we might be number 2 in the world after China, but then at the same time, most of the population of China is aging population, whereas most of the majority of people in India are younger. They belong to the younger age group, and that's where we enjoy a demographic advantage over China and other countries of the world. Globalization has changed the rules across the markets. In India, the globalization wave started off with the global economic reforms by way of the LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization, the big bag reforms which happened in India in the year 1991. Ever since then, Indian economy has been closely intertwined, very well interconnected, and closely associated with entire set of different countries in the world, both in terms of inflows as well as outflows. We have many foreign companies who have set up subsidiary companies or sales offices or market offices in India. At the same time, we have a lot of companies from India which have ventured outside, set up their manufacturing facilities, production facilities, marketing affiliates, logistic companies abroad. So globalization has really changed the rules across different markets. Customer expectations have dramatically changed over the period of last about 2 or 3 decades. Today, the customer, who is the center of the entire business, if there is no customer, there's no me, there's no you, there are no students, there's no business, nobody is there. Entire edifice of the corporate world is built around and it spins around the customer. Unless you are able to provide the satisfaction expected by the customer from the products or the services that you provide to him, I don't think you'll be able to survive in the market on a sustainable basis. Customers today want everything faster, everything better, more differentiated, and they want a personalized service. They want a very, very minute attention to be given to their requirements. What is that they're expecting from a product or from a service? That's what is the expectation of the customers today. So we used to talk about the concept of customer satisfaction. That's providing utility from a product or providing satisfaction to a customer by way of providing a product or a service which is as per his expectation. But now the world is moving towards customer delight. That means we need to now provide to the customers value and utility from a product or a service which is even beyond his or her expectation. That's what is known as corporate delight or customer delight. To give you a simple real-life example, last Deepavali, I went to a jeweler's shop selling silverware because I wanted to pick up a small gift item for giving to a corporate friend of mine. I picked up whatever I wanted to buy. I paid for the said item. The shopkeeper nicely gift wrapped it and gave it to me. I started walking out of his shop. Once I reached very close to the entrance door of that shop, this fellow called me from the back and said, "Sir, just a minute." I said, "Baba, what happened?" I have picked up what I wanted to buy. I've also paid for what I was supposed to pay. And then what is there? When I turned back, I saw this person, the shopkeeper, standing with a small gift wrapped gift in his hand, and he gave it to me and he said, "Sir, happy Deepavali." This is not what I had bargained for. I picked up an item, I paid for that, and the transaction between the buyer and the seller were complete. But this was something just out of the blue, totally unexpected. As soon as I came back to my car, there was huge curiosity. What is that he has given to me? I immediately rushed to open the gift box, and there was nothing, just a small bowl of glass, maybe not costing more than 125, 150 rupees. But the way it was given, this is a real life example of customer delight. And probably he made me my lifelong customer because the kind of gestures he had shown by giving me something over and above what I intended to buy or what I bargained for. This is what is known as the customer delight. So we need to be very, very sure, be it in the dimension of finance, be it in the dimension of marketing, be it in the dimension of any other aspect of the functioning of the corporate, you also always got to keep in mind the customer element, the customer satisfaction element. It's not that customer centric are only people who belong to the marketing department, marketing division. No, each one of us are, whichever way, whichever function we are working in, be it in finance, be it in quality control, be it in operation production, we must always keep in mind the focus on the customer, because he is the start and the end of whatever I do in my company or whatever my company strives for. Of course, climate change has had a huge environmental impact across the world. So we have the Paris Climate Agreement, and we have various other measures being taken by different countries to make this planet a better place to live in, at least keep it in the present state. Because this is what we have inherited from our forefathers. We have a moral responsibility of leaving the planet in the same shape and form for our future generations as well. That's where the ESG, environmental, societal, and governance factors become more important when we look at the performance of the company and going beyond its simple financial performance. That's the theme that I'm going to talk to today, that changing dimensions of finance. Finance not only remains today as kind of a scorekeeping job. No, you and the finance people or the leaders working in the finance domain are actually the score creators. They create the score for the company. They improve the standing of the company. They create the branding of the company. How? I'm going to deal with that little later in my presentation. Corporate social responsibility is now accepted as a mandatory requirement from the corporate's perspective. In India, we have Section 135 of the Companies Act 2013, which mandates spending a 2% amount of the profit earned by a corporate towards corporate social responsibility. Because whatever a company is able to do, it draws its various resources from the society. So it has a moral responsibility of paying back something back to the society. But I have a slightly different take on this aspect. What I perceive and what I believe in is that CSR probably comes later. First, it has to be ISR, individual social responsibility. What is that I can do? What is that you can do? What is that all of us can do individually? Let us do that. Let us make the country a better place to live in. Let us make the world a better place to live in. Corporate social responsibility comes later. First, I think individually, all of us, what we can do, we should be doing that as part of our ISR. Similarly, we talk about the concept of corporate governance. I think before corporate governance, what is important for all of us is to focus on self-governance. Are you governing yourself? Is your conduct according to, just before the break, we were having a very nice discussion on dharma versus ethics. You have dharma, you have ethics, you are taught in the school, you are taught in the college, your upbringing gives you all those particular qualities, at least in India. But the important point there to note is, do you actually live by the code of ethics and code of conduct? All companies in India are mandated to have a code of conduct. It is also required to be hosted on a website of the company, also required to be circulated across entire organization. And if you ask the people, present in the company, do you know your company has a code of conduct? Everybody will say yes. But when you ask the next question, have you read it? I think some of them are going to say, no, I haven't read it. I know that it's there, but I haven't read it. And if you still further probe and ask the third question, have you understood it? I think very few people will say, yes, we have understood it. And if you ask the final question, do you live by the code of conduct of the company? I've actually experimented this and tried this out as kind of a case study and role exercise. I found that very, very few people were there at the end of the fourth question that I raised. Do you live by the code of conduct? Very few people said yes to that answer. That means it has to be not only as part of your code of conduct, as part of the code of conduct or code of ethic policies, it has to be part of your DNA. Then only you can truly follow dharma, follow ethics, and make your business ethical. Because going forward, the companies which are going to be sustainable on a progressive basis are companies which are going to be based upon the principles of ESG, environment care, societal care. Governance structure should be such which is based upon tenets of transparency, tenets of ethics, tenets of trust, and of course, accountability. And then Brexit. There is a rising tide of nationalism and deglobalization which is happening in the corporate world now. You know, prior to 2007-2008, when the world was hit by a recession, that mortgage crisis of the US or the subprime crisis, prior to that, there was sort of a blind rat race towards globalization. Countries just wanted to grow and they just wanted to globalize at a very, very rapid, fast pace, and this was kind of a rat race. But when the recession phase got over, around the period 2012-2013, ever since then, the mindset, the thinking of the people across the world, especially the policy makers, has undergone a dramatic change. All the countries of the world now are not going for a rat race or a blind race towards globalization. In fact, many of the countries have gone in for a retreat, and they say, we're not saying being pulling out of ourselves out of the globalized network. We'll definitely be part of that, but we will no longer follow the blind race towards globalization because we want to protect our own national interest. That's where H-1B visas have been cut down and a lot of other actions have been taken by various countries of the world with a view to protecting the interest of their own country, the interest of their own people of the country, and blind race towards globalization has ended. And we are right now passing through an era of deglobalization. So given the changing landscape of business, that's changing paradigms of business, what do we have now is in the marketplace we find companies, startups with very, very disruptive business models. The kind of business models which were sort of unheard of till about a few decades back. To give you a few examples, today we live in a world where the world's largest travel lodging company does not own a single hotel room, Airbnb. We live in a world where the world's largest travel car company does not own a single car of their own, Uber. Amazon is the world's largest retailer, and this company doesn't have even a single brick and mortar store. Very, very disruptive business models, unheard of till about a few decades back. And that's where we got to first enrich our knowledge, and then we got to impart this knowledge to our students, that going forward, this is going to be the kind of scenario which the students are going to face in the accounting domain, in the finance domain. How to prepare for that is our responsibility, and for that we first got to enrich ourselves how to deal with these kind of disruptive business models. So when you look at these disruptive business companies, many a time we find that many of these companies have cashless profit. They have a good enough bottom line, but there's no liquidity, there's no cash in the company. Or you have profitless turnover. You have a good enough top line, good enough turnover for a company, but end of the day, there's no profit. But when you look at the valuations of these companies, wow, skyrocketing, soaring very, very high. Cashless profit, profit less turnover, but valuations very, very high. That's one significant change which is happening in the domain of finance in the marketplace, in the real sense in industry, is that people today are no longer only have a fixation for profit or profitability, but they're actually looking at value creation for the stakeholders. Is the company able to create value? Is the company able to preserve that value? And is the company able to enhance that value going forward over a period of time on a sustainable basis? That is the success mantra for the corporate world in future. Now, what role a finance leader or a finance person can play in this dimension, that's going to be, I'm going to talk about little later as part of my presentation. So to compete effectively in today's markets, companies need to be very, very competitive, not in one aspect, but quite a few aspects simultaneously at the same time. You've got to be competitive in terms of price, in terms of quality, in terms of delivery. Customers always want everything yesterday, not even today. They want everything yesterday. You got to be responsive, not reactive, but you got to be responsive to what the market requires at a given point of time. You got to be flexible, means adaptable. You must have a very, very resilient business model. You know, in the COVID-19 pandemic situation, it has impacted humanity as a whole. It has impacted lives, it has impacted livelihood, and it has also impacted lives of the firm. Now, talking only about the corporate world out here, many of the companies have had a huge negative impact on account of COVID-19. Some of the sectors also have been benefited, of course, but most and majority of the sectors have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic situation. And when we look at the research, when we look at the details in the marketplace, some of the firms have been able to weather this storm, and they've been able to keep their head afloat above the water, even in these tough, trying times of COVID-19, because they had a very, very resilient business model. They had a business model which was very, very agile, which was flexible, which was adaptable, and the companies used that to your advantage, and thus they were able to keep themselves afloat, even in these trying times of COVID-19 pandemic situation. Now, you can probably ask me a question here. We are talking about changing dimensions of finance. What role a finance guy has got to play in creating a business model? Well, that's what is changing in the marketplace. The finance leaders of today are not only accountants, are not only keeping accounts of the company by following a double entry bookkeeping system. They're not only people who arrange the sources of funds, both international as well as domestic funding. They are the people who are actually playing an important part in creation of strategy for the company. And business model, when I talk about, is definitely one of the important aspects of the kind of strategy that the company would like to follow going forward. And then innovation is the key. Unless you innovate, unless you try to create something new, unless you are able to create very, very real, genuine differentiation in your product or service, I don't think you have a great future going forward in the marketplace. You must have heard there is a Chinese company which has started selling fresh air filled in canisters. Just as we buy the water bottle from the market these days, they are selling fresh air which they have got from Alpine Mountain, Alps in the Switzerland, and from there they picked up and filled up those canisters and they're selling it out in the marketplace. I don't think the product has yet hit the Indian market, but just to give an example of the kind of innovation that the world is going in for. Everybody would say, why, Baba? Air is free. It is available to all of us. Yes, it is available, but then it is polluted here. In most of the parts of the world, the air that we have is polluted, and fresh, pure air has become kind of a scarcity. Now, looking at that business opportunity, some companies have ventured in selling fresh air filled up in canisters, and that's the new business model that they are coming out with. So, a company today needs to be competitive not only on the pricing aspect, but also all the other dimensions: quality, delivery, responsiveness, flexibility, innovation, and end of the day, one single word which summarizes the whole objective and the mantra of success for the corporate world today: consistently create value. How do we create value? By saving money, that's cost reduction, cost control, and other techniques that you might apply in a real case. Make money by making money, increasing your turnover, getting more revenue into your business, by improving efficiency of a process. That's why we have BPR, business process restructuring. That means any process that you follow as an operational process in your business is going to comprise of various steps, various stages, and various activities. In business process restructuring or business process re-engineering, we carefully look at the various aspects of a process. We analyze the different activities and try and find out which are those activities which are currently part of a process but which unfortunately are not adding any value. These are non-value adding activities. So we must pull them out. We must take those kind of activities out of the whole process structure which are not creating any kind of value. That's how perhaps we can increase the efficiency and effectiveness of a process. We got to consistently improve the quality of the product and services because we are living in a globalized world and it's kind of a global village. We got to compete with the best in the world. Not only best in India, but we are now competing with best of the world companies, and therefore huge impetus has to be given. Very important focus has to be there on maintaining quality of the product. Fixation of an existing problem. That's what is a normal marketing cliche, So how do you decide which new product you're going to introduce into the market? One of the marketing approaches: identify an existing problem and provide a solution to that problem through a product or a service. Or vice versa, we can also be proactive. Prevent a future problem. Develop a product or develop a service and start offering that in the marketplace with a view to preventing a future problem. I think there can be a third dimension also. Create a need for a new product and then provide that product to the customer. I mean, that's the ultimate for the marketing perspective. Create a need. There's no need for that kind of a product or a service. But then as an active, proactive marketing guy and a finance support, you can create a need for a particular product or service and then fulfill by need by providing that particular product or service in the market. This is the kind of a backdrop that we have real life existing in a marketplace, because I've spent over 40 years in the corporate sector. I've been a visiting faculty at many of the B schools for over 30 years. I've been interacting with faculty, students through and through for the last couple of decades. This is what I wanted to share, that we all as faculties must try and keep this at the back of our mind and prepare our students for facing these kind of situations going forward. And that will be a real contribution in building up a generation of successful leaders and successful managers. So the future ready finance leader will move from the traditional role as being scorekeepers. What does a traditional accounting person does? He records all the various transactions in journal. Then he does the ledger. Then he does the trial balance. Then he prepares the financial statements, income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow, statement of changes in shareholders' equity. But today we are moving towards becoming score makers. We actually create the numbers for the company. We don't only dabble with the numbers once the numbers have already been validated, but actually we make the numbers, we create the numbers for the company. We play a very, very important part in formulation of their strategy, in operationalizing of that strategy, and of course, trying to find out new and innovative ways of driving the growth agenda of the company going forward. And the role of the finance leader today is moving towards score makers. CFO can play a very critical and strategic role in encouraging value orientation in managing the business in emerging scenarios. The mindset of the people has to change. We all have to develop what is commonly known as money sense. It's a very popular program that's been delivered all over, finance for non-finance managers. I myself conducted a whole lot of programs, finance for non-finance manager for various corporates, even for some of the faculty members. The first thing I start with when I present that particular program or that particular workshop is, I say finance orientation or knowledge about the finance basic concepts is not only a functional responsibility or a functional requirement for an accounts guy or for a person dealing with finance, but actually it is required by everyone. Whatever area an operational manager may be working in, be it production, be it operations, be it supply chain management, be it logistics, everywhere you got to have in back of your mind creating value for the business or value orientation, and that requires you to focus on how do I save money, how do I make money, how do I improve efficiency of a process. Now this is not only the requirement from the finance leader, this is the kind of mindset, this is the kind of orientation required to be present amongst all the different operational managers of the company in whichever discipline they might be working. So what is value? People say it's very simple to say create value for the stakeholders, but what exactly is value? Not many people are really clear about the concept of value. Simply stated, value is measured by the extent to which it improves people's businesses or lives. How do you improve the lives of people living on this planet? I'm not only talking about Indians. How do you improve the businesses across the world? That's what is measured by in terms of creation of value. And business leaders or the finance leaders of tomorrow, they've got to focus on how organizational value is created, not only created, but how it is preserved. And preservation is also not enough, how the value is enhanced going forward. That's what has to be the core focus area of the future leaders. But then, of course, the perception of value differs from person to person. It differs from situation to situation. Right now, India's GDP is 2.8 trillion US dollars. Where is US? US economy is at about 22-23 trillion US dollars, almost about 8 times the size of India. Where is China? China's GDP is about 2/3 of that of US. It's about 15-16 trillion US dollars. But the question that I'm raising here from the broader perspective is GDP the right measure, the right indicator of the level of economic development of the country? Some people have already started questioning that, and they have developed yet another parallel concept known as Gross National Happiness Index. I recently published a paper on the same, Gross National Happiness Index. That means it's not only money, number or your GDP level is going to be important for determining whether your company is economically developed or not. What you got to see is whether people of your country are happy or not. Of course, A.S. Maslow's theory, need hierarchy theory, physiological needs, safety needs, social needs, ego needs, needs for self-actualization. Unless you have a basic subsistence economic level, you can't really be happy. No doubt about that. GDP is important, but more important is its equitable distribution. In India, the distribution of GDP is highly skewed. That's why we are looking for and calling for inclusive growth. Unless the inclusive growth happens, people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, they're not going to be getting up, they're not going to be coming up. And that's where each corporate entity has a responsibility of pulling those people at the bottom of the pyramid and bring them somewhere around the middle, at least, with a view to providing them a better life to be living on this planet. And how do we do that? That's what is the mantra for creating value. The CFO, the finance leaders of today, are actually migrating to the position of Chief Value Officer. How do you become a chief value officer? When your CFO skills, when your finance skills are clubbed, enhanced by your business leadership skills. I'm sure that's what you all people teach to your students in the management schools. But then only being a finance guy, you might become a CFO, that's all about it. But you keep only focus on the finance dimension, I don't think you can get to the position and the level of chief value officer. You can't really become kind of a driving force for driving the growth agenda of the business on a sustainable basis unless you mix and merge and synergize your finance skills with that of your business skills. And what are business skills? You must have analytical bent of mind. You should be playing an important part in strategy formulation of the company, in creating the business model for the company. That's where the role of the future ready finance leader comes into play. So you got to create value. How do you do that? Develop strategies for sustainable value creation. You must enable value by supporting management in decision making and facilitating performance management. How do you measure the performance of a company? Only profit? No. Then we had triple bottom line. People, planet, profits. Now we have 4 P's. People, planet, profit, pandemic. You have balance scorecard. You have a whole lot of other techniques by which you can measure the performance of a company. But the important point to note, which I want to share while talking about emerging dimensions of corporate reporting, that the stakeholders of today, they want to know from the company not only financial performance numbers, but the entire strategy, entire vision. How do they think they are going to create value for the stakeholders? They might be able to do, they may not be able to do, but at least the stakeholders want all this information. I must preserve the value for the organization, and then I must report both internally by way of management accounting and report externally as part of the financial reporting disclosure requirements, which are mandated as per different laws prevailing in different countries. I must create value, enable value, preserve value, enhance value, report value. So to clarify what I mean by value creation for companies, what is that we want to prepare our students for? We want our students to become value drivers wherever they go. Maybe they are specializing in finance, but they have to be given a different orientation probably. We need to tell them, you are not only going to be the score keepers, but you are going to be score makers. You've got to make the numbers that the company has and not only keep a track of what is happening in the company through the lens of the numbers. So what are the valuable companies? Who are the valuable companies? Valuable companies are those which are constantly innovating and delighting their customers with new products. The companies which are built to last, that book, well-known book. The companies which make a lot of money and they share their prosperity with the stakeholders. The companies which focus on 3 P's, maybe 4th also, pandemic. The companies which infect their users with their brand. The companies which have systems and processes which are globally acceptable, best practices, and these companies are global, but focus on local, glocal, G-L-O-C-A-L, glocal. These are the companies which every day focus on great execution. That's why they have a cutting edge over their competing corporates in the marketplace. They must have great to good. They must become great to good by having a purpose-driven, value-led leadership agenda. And many of the companies are saying, wow, we have been very severely negatively impacted by the COVID, but whenever there is a challenge, there is always a lurking opportunity. Don't take this downturn. It is very important for you. Don't waste it as being a terrible thing. It has taught you a lot of lessons. And by those particular learnings that the pandemic-19 has taught all of us, both individually as well as at the organizational level, we can really turn around our organization by learnings of the downturn that we are currently passing through. So, in future, the future leaders, the changing dimensions of finance, the leaders of tomorrow, specializing in finance, they will have to transition to become business leaders. How that will happen? You got to develop insight into the organization's strategy and also understand how that strategy relates to the organization's ability to be able to create value, or simply identify what are the value drivers. What is the value driver for Hindustan Liver? I think the logistics, the distribution network that that company has, nobody else knows that company can match. What is the value driver for L&T, Larsen & Toubro? Their technical expertise, hugely strong, very, very strong. Each company has to identify what are the key drivers that will drive the value within the company, and that's where the strategy has to be focused on. And then, of course, triple P, don't only focus, don't only have unrealistic fixation only on your financial performance. Zomato, the IPO which recently hit the market, the company had a 2,700 crore top line turnover. The company had a current year loss of 2,300 crores. The company has accumulated loss of 4,600 crores. But the company's stock market was oversubscribed. The issue was oversubscribed 38 times. And the share was issued at a price band of 75. It's currently ruling in the market at about 140, 145. Going strictly by the financial numbers, even Ashwath Damodaran, the guru of valuation, the worldwide acknowledged guru, even he has done some kind of analysis or case study of Zomato, and what he mentioned in one of his articles was, going by the financial performance, the value of share of this company should not have been anything more than 35 to 40. Just about half the number what the company actually came out with, and people showed such an enthusiasm that the IPO was oversubscribed 38 times. That means people today, stakeholders today, are not only looking at your financial performance, other importance is also given to how the company's operations are impacting the environment, how the company is creating positive development insights for the society as a whole, what is the governance structure of the company, is the company dealing in and has a strong commitment towards social finance, towards ethical finance, towards impact investing. I mean, all these are very, very innovative topics to be at least dealt with in the class as kind of a guest lecture, even if they are not as part of the syllabus. Talk about social finance. The students of today must know, they are the future leaders. What is social finance? They must be told what is ethical finance, what is impact investing, what is neurofinance. Behavioral finance, I understand many of the B schools have introduced that as at least an optional paper in the basket, but social finance, ethical finance, impact investing, neurofinance, I think they need to be told about all this, because going forward, the stakeholders are going to ask them how the company has performed on non-financial parameters, on non-financial measures of performance. So estimate and evaluate capital value proposition through costing, revenue, profitability, financial and non-financial and non-quantitative analysis. We all teach capital budgeting to our students in the class. Very simple. The payback period, accounting rate of return, discounted cash flow approach, IRR, modified IRR, multiple IRR, net present value index method, whole lot of things we teach to our students. But do we also tell them in detail that while evaluating a project, it's not only IRR or NPV which is going to be very, very significant, important. We must also look at the impact of this project on ESG, on sustainable development goals that UN has projected for the year 2030. Is this project going to contribute towards achievement of the sustainable development goals of the UN or not? That also must be part of the discussion while evaluating any new capital budgeting project. That's the new dimension of finance that we must teach to our students. We must bring it to their mind that while evaluating a project, don't only have a fixation of capital budgeting techniques, but also look at non-financial, non-quantitative parameters and analysis. And of course, there has to be value-based leadership. You must walk the talk. Again, the same discussion on dharma and ethics. Well, you must walk the talk. You may be a very good speaker. You have given a lot of discourses. You have given a lot of lectures on what is dharma, what is ethics. But do you live the concept? Do you live the ethics? Do you live the code of conduct? That's where I mentioned walk the talk. So the Guru Mantras for the CFOs of the future, or the people who are going to work in the finance domain going forward, the Guru Mantras are, you've got to move from being a numbers person. Numbers are not the end of story. Numbers are not the end of whatever you do in the company as a leader. You got to move beyond the numbers person. You must have a passion for understanding the business beyond financial matters. That's how you will get into strategy. That's how you'll become part of the decision-making team of the company. That's how you'll create, preserve, enhance, and deliver value to the company. Enjoy learning about multifaceted dimensions of business. Effectively communicate with all people who drive the business. I think communication is part of the corporate reporting. The way the corporate reporting is being done today, through an annual report prepared on a historical basis, I think it has lost its relevance, at least from the practical perspective. Even though it is statutorily, mandatorily required by laws of various countries of the world, but the countries and companies are moving towards a different kind of a corporate reporting, which I'm going to talk about it later. Some of you may have already had some idea, some background of that. Maybe you have read some papers. I'm going to talk about integrated reporting a little while after now. You must have the confidence to take on risks and challenges, because risks are challenging, but at the same time, they unfold a lot of new opportunities for the business. You must not be only a sounding board or a scorekeeper, but you must be a partner for growth in the business. You must be a change agent. As a finance guy, as a finance leader, you must be a change leader. You must drive the whole lot of value creation, value preservation, value enhancement agenda of the corporate enterprise. That's what is going to be the future role of a finance leader. So moving to and connecting with the same topic now, let's look at how the reporting is undergoing a change in terms of integrated reporting, what it is and what it does. The world is changing. That's what we discussed a little while ago. And therefore, corporate reporting must change too. You can't have a corporate reporting system in 21st century. When the world has moved to 21st century, you can't apply the rules of the game. You can't apply reporting practices which were useful and prevalent in 20th century. Because the dynamics has changed, the landscape of business has changed, your corporate reporting must also change. Corporate reporting has evolved over the last decade. It has become more transparent, more relevant, more comprehensive in providing information to key users and stakeholders. A lot of changes have taken place even in the historical corporate reporting architecture that we have, annual report that we prepare. It contains financial statements. It contains director's report. The contents of the director's report are as mandated under LODR, listing obligations and disclosure requirements of SEBI. And then we have management discussion and analysis, MDA. There is one part of the annual report. And then you also have probably a chairman's message given by the chairman of the company, and the kind of things which are required to be disclosed. The disclosure requirements are changing, have changed significantly over the last 1.5 or 2 decades, even in India. For many years, investors and other stakeholders have felt the limitations in the current form of annual reporting, because they say the current annual financial reporting is a short-term approach. It is inadequate to meet the information needs of the investors and other stakeholders. What do they want? They want to have a holistic, broad, all-encompassing view of the company's performance. They're not saying company's financial performance. What they want is, they want holistic view of the company's overall performance and the ability to connect financial and sustainability performance. The primary objective of integrated reporting is to help stakeholders analyze and assess the company's ability to create and sustain value in the short term, in the medium term, and the long term. There is an International Integrated Reporting Council, IIRC. It's a group of organizations coming together, promoting the concept of integrating reporting the worldwide. IIRC, based out of UK. You can check their website. And the way they define integrated reporting as, integrating reporting demonstrates the linkage between an organization's strategy, governance, and financial performance in the short, medium, and long term, and the social, environmental, and economic context within which it operates. Do you think all this information is currently being provided through the historical annual report? The answer is no. Many of the things, we are only providing financial performance and maybe director support, MDA, auditor support, but here, look here, what is the requirement? Stakeholders today are wanting to know what is the organizational strategy, what is the governance structure of the company, how the company is operating in the social, environmental, and economic context, and how the company is creating value in the short run, in the medium run, in the long run. Clearly, the current annual reporting format that we have, or the current corporate reporting that we have, is definitely not enough to provide adequate and the expected information to the stakeholders of the company. What is integrated reporting? An integrated report is a concise communication about how an organization's strategy, governance, performance, and prospects lead to creation of value over short, medium, and long term. This is what we got to teach the students of finance today so that they can become leaders of finance tomorrow. Because that's going to be the future, how the corporate reporting will take place. And not only corporate reporting, the entire focus of the organizations across the world is going to shift onto this particular single para. You will have to tell your stakeholders organization strategy, governance, prospects, how do you create value in the short term, medium term, and the long term. But the important word in the first line is concise communication. It is not expected that you'll prepare a 200-page report on integrated reports circulated every year. You know, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India gives an award every year to, I think, one public sector company and one private sector company preparing the best annual report. Everybody tries to vie for that award, and they print their annual report on a glossy paper, all kinds of graphs and charts, beautiful colored, very good. But basically, essentially, when you look at the content part of it, it lacks a whole lot of content which is actually expected by the stakeholders of the company. So the requirement here in integrated reporting is, don't take it as kind of a burden on you to prepare a 200-page report to explain everything about strategy, governance, value. No, it should be very, very concise. And that's where the art of presenting an integrated report in a concise form, the skill to present and report in a very, very concise, brief form will come into play. How brief? I really don't know. Nobody knows. It can be maybe 15 pages. It can be maybe 50 pages. It can be maybe 100 pages. But the requirement is it has to be very, very focused, but very, very concise. The primary focus of integrated report is to explain to providers of financial capital, owners of the company, how an organization creates value over a period of time. Integrated reporting will help analyze companies' level of control and influence on various forms of capital, and whether its activities serve to increase or decrease the stock of various forms of capital. That's an important distinguishing feature of integrated reporting, that in traditional historical accounting, we talk about capital only in the sense of financial capital, share capital, equity capital, preference capital. So broadly, there are two sources of finance that we have. We have debt capital, we have equity capital. But in integrated reporting, the concept is there are 6 different types of capital. Financial capital is just one of them. There are 6 different types of capital which are associated with the functioning of a corporate enterprise. All of these need to be carefully integrated with a view to creating value for the stakeholders in the marketplace. I'm just going to explain what are those 6 different types of capital. So the requirement is for all of us to move towards an emerging new reporting framework that provides the information needed to assess the value that an organization creates in the 21st century. So what are the objectives and basic concepts of integrated reporting? Of course, one of the objectives is to improve the quality of information available to people, to provide more cohesive and efficient approach to corporate reporting, to enhance accountability and stewardship. That means the leaders of the business, they must consider 6 different types of capital, which are financial, manufactured, intellectual, human, social and relationship, and natural. And promote understanding how all these 6 different types of capitals are interdependent, interlinked. Integrated reporting helps business to think holistically about what are the strategic actions that the company needs to take based upon the strategy, based upon the business model, based upon long-range plan, short-range plan, medium-range plan. Because, even in India, the 5-year planning process has been disbanded. All of you must be aware of. Some of you might also be teaching economics. The last 5-year plan that we have in India was for the period 2012-2017. When the new government came into power, led by Mr. Modi, he disbanded the 5-year planning process, and instead, the model that the country is following now is 15 years vision, 7 years strategy, and a 3 years action plan. We don't have any more 5-year plan. The 12th 5-year plan, the period was 2012-2017, and that's where it ended. And there is no 13th 5-year plan now, whereas we are dealing with 15 years vision, 7-year strategy, and a 3-year action plan. And the Planning Commission has been disbanded, and now in this place we have Niti Aayog, NITI. What is the full form of NITI? National Institution for Transforming India. National Institution for Transforming India, Niti Aayog. So based upon the strategy and the business model, the company is able to make informed decisions, and based upon that, the company is effectively able to manage various kinds of risks, and this helps in improving and building confidence of all the stakeholders of the company. Integrated reporting is all about creating a story of the business, not only numbers, connecting all the dots together, linking numbers with non-quantitative information, linking financial performance with strategy, linking financial performance with ESG, linking financial performance and operational performance with sustainable development goals of the US, and then craft out the story of the business. That's what integrated reporting is all about. Think, plan, and report. It's a common feature, we all understand, especially the finance faculty, that a company with a balance sheet size of say 100 crores might have a market capitalization of 500 crores. Quite possible. How? Because it has been proved by the research. This data is slightly maybe 5 years old, but the trend is more or less the same. That research has shown that the value that's reflected in the financial statements of the company is just about 20, 25 to 30% of the value of the business. Rest of the value of the business is driven by intangible factors. Manpower, intellect, patent, copyright, trademark, logo, brand equity. That's what actually drives the value of the business. That's why it's not surprising to have this kind of a story where a company with a balance sheet size of 100 crores has a market cap of something like 500 crores. What is the market cap to GDP ratio of India today? It's about 105%. And that's been because the Indian stock market over the last few weeks has hugely risen from the level of something like 51,000 to about 59,000 today, a very, very galloping increase in the Sensex. But otherwise, it used to be more or less around 100%. But right now, the market cap of India has crossed $3 trillion mark. Which company has the highest market cap in India as of today? Every day, there is a toss-up between TCS and Reliance. Depending upon the movement in the share price, either Reliance Industries Limited or TCS comes out as a winner or comes out as a topper with the company having a highest market cap in the marketplace. The point is, integrated reporting focuses on providing information to the stakeholders on the non-financial aspects of the company as well, because the non-financial aspects and dimensions are more important probably even compared to the numbers that we generally look at. That's been proved by the research. So integrated report should tell a story. It's like a zigzag puzzle. In the first block, everything is zigzag. In the second block, you try to give them some kind of a structure. When you put them all together, financial and non-financial information, when you put them all together and cook a story out of that, craft a story out of that, that's what an integrated report is. Nothing more, nothing less. An integrated report should tell a story where each dot is connected with the other so as to make a holistic perspective as to how the company is functioning, where the company is going, how value is created, preserved, and enhanced. That's the entire focus in integrated report. So, integrated reporting is a concise communication about value creation over time. In fact, I got interested in this aspect when I addressed an international conference in Sri Lanka in the year 2012. Ever since I've been doing research in this area, I've already published about 7-8 papers so far and addressed a large number of national international conferences. SEBI has, on a voluntary basis, given directive to top 500 companies by market cap to try and attempt and prepare integrated report. But as of now, the real number of companies preparing integrated report is just about 46. We have 46 companies in India as of today which are preparing integrated report. But to make it clear, integrated report does not mean that you club all the additional information in the annual report itself. And if your annual report was 100 pages earlier, you make it a 150-page report and you say it's a consolidated report. Well, that's one option. But most of the companies, what they do, because as per law, you are mandated to have an annual report in the given format, in the current format. You can't discontinue with that. Normally, companies prepare a separate report, which is titled as an integrated report. And while analyzing the performance of a company, you got to read both the reports together. But if the integrated report is written and published in an effective manner, it would tell you both the aspects, the financial as well as the non-financial. I have personally handled projects for 2 companies where I was involved in preparing and crafting out the integrated report for that company. So I sort of have some kind of a hands-on experience as to how to go about creating and crafting and coming out with an integrated report. Out of 46 companies, I would not like to name the company, but I have personally worked as a consultant for 2 companies crafting out their integrated report out of 46 companies which are doing it as of today. So integrated report is a concise communication as to how a company creates value over short term, medium term, and long term. And it is financial reporting, non-financial reporting about strategy, governance, environmental, societal impact, performance, prospects. Everything is provided what a stakeholder might like to know about a particular company. So what is the difference between traditional reporting that we have right now and the proposed change to move towards integrated reporting? Thinking. The current format of corporate reporting is disconnected. Only the financial numbers, and those financial numbers are not connected with strategy, not connected with environment, not connected with societal impact. Whereas in the IR, it's going to be integrated. In traditional corporate reporting, we only look at financial capital. But here we talk about 6 different types of capital. Financial capital, social and relational capital, intellectual capital, natural capital, manufactured capital, environmental capital. In the current corporate reporting, the focus is on past and the focus is on financial numbers. In IR, the focus is on past. Of course, you got to look at the trends and future. And the focus is on strategy. The time frame of an annual report is short term. The time dimensions covering integrated report encompass short term, medium term, and long term. Disclosures are very, very narrow in historical annual report. There is greater transparency in integrated reports. Annual report is rule bound. What are going to be contents of director's report? What are going to be contents of auditor's report? Everything is mandated by law, regulations. IR is responsive to individual circumstances. It's like writing a story. When you write a story, you can have your own plot. You can give it different dimensions. You can turn it around whatever way you think it's going to be useful. So there's a lot of flexibility in the case of IR. Annual report, long and complex, 100 pages, 150 pages, 200 pages, whereas IR, concise but material. Capture only what is relevant for the stakeholder, capture only what is relevant, be very, very concise. And technology enabled, that's very simple. So different kinds of capitals that we have. Financial capital means the pool of funds available to a company. Manufactured capital includes manufactured physical objects. Human capital is skills of the people, their experience, their motivations to innovate. Intellectual capital is intangibles that provide competitive advantage to a company. Natural capital is water, land, minerals, forest, biodiversity, ecosystem. Social capital is institutions and relationships established within and between each community group of stakeholders and other networks to enhance individual and collective well-being. It's like self-help groups, which you must have heard of. That's why it's very important today to teach our students of finance, social finance. You got to teach them environmental accounting. That's a new emerging area. How do you do accounting for environmental aspects? You got to teach them about green bonds. Many companies, even in India, have already issued green bonds. It's becoming a very, very important aspect of funding for the companies. There are many mutual funds now being announced. Recently, Aditya Birla has announced a mutual fund which is based on investing in companies which follow the ESG standards. They will invest only in those companies which are having a high grade ESG parameter. They will not invest the mutual fund money in any other company for that forward. So going forward, slowly and slowly, people are getting awareness about the importance of environment, societal impact, financial performance, strategy, branding, and improving the lot of the people, getting them out of the bottom of the pyramid, at least to the middle of the structure. That's going to be the key focus of companies in future. IR framework aims to allocate effectively all the different types of capital. It's a cohesive and efficient approach to corporate reporting. It enhances accountability of the owners and managers of the business, and it supports integrated thinking. It is basically a mindset that is important. You've got to connect everything together. When you start formulating your strategy, don't only like to think of as if I'm preparing a financial budget, as if what is going to be turnover, what are going to be expenses, what is going to be bottom line. Well, financial performance is important, but also look at anytime you decide to go for a new project and discussion happens in the boardroom for that, a finance guy would have carried out a very, very meticulous capital budgeting exercise. But when it comes to the board level, the questions asked are, what is going to be environmental impact of this project? What is going to be societal impact of this business? How this project is going to add value to the existing value of the business? These are the questions which are asked in the boardroom. So the finance leaders of tomorrow, the students that you teach today as faculty, these students will become managers and leaders of finance tomorrow. They got to be right at this point of time, be told what kind of change is going to come in the marketplace, and for which we must prepare them, and they must also prepare themselves to be effective future leaders of tomorrow. So what are the guiding principles of integrated reporting? Strategic focus and future orientation. The current corporate reporting structure that we have, annual report, it is just the reverse of that. It is looking at the past, looking through the rear view. What happened in the last year during the period 1st of April till 31st of March, that you very, very meticulously report in your annual report. But in integrated reporting, you are actually looking at the future. Your future orientation becomes important, and that also takes care of the strategic focus. What is that you would like to achieve going forward in terms of ESG, environment, social, governance, and of course, the economic performance of the company. Connectivity of information. How strategy is connected with business model, how actions of the managers are connected with the business model, how processes are connected with the actions. This is internal. And then going outside, external, how everything that the company does is connected with environment. How everything that the company does is connected with society. So there has to be focus on integrating information internally as well as with the external world. And obviously, you have to have responsiveness towards your stakeholders. You should not provide to stakeholders what the law mandates. You should not provide information to stakeholders what you think is important for us. You should provide information to the stakeholders what they want. Look at the difference. Right now, we are providing information to the stakeholders what is mandated by the law and what we think is important for us. But the change is going to be in future. You'll be required to provide information to the stakeholders, asking them, what do you want? In what format? So that I can provide that kind of an information to you so that we can all collaborate together, make this enterprise from good to better, from better to best, and build to last on a sustainable basis. But time and again, I'm focusing on this word conciseness. You know, writing an essay of a 10-page is probably easier than summarizing the thoughts of those 10 pages in probably 10 lines. You will all agree with me. That is what is meant here. You have to develop a skill of writing a story about the company, about its strategy, about its business model, about its activity, about its ESG parameters. But that has to be done very, very concise. And therefore, if you want to be concise, if you have to be concise in writing the story, obviously, you've got to identify material factors. And then you have to have some kind of a parameter, some kind of a threshold to decide what is material, what is not material. There can be no universal guide for that, because what is material for one company may not be material for other companies. Each company has a specific business model, a specific strategy, and therefore you got to work it out depending upon what is material from the perspective of the company with which you are currently dealing with. The information that you will provide in the integrated report, that's the new way of corporate reporting in 21st century, has to be reliable, of course. Your story has to be reliable. It's not fiction that you are writing. Fiction is different. This is something like writing kind of an autobiography or a biography, and writing a futuristic story, which should be based upon reliability of numbers, reliability of perception, reliability of strategy, reliability of business model, and it should be complete. And there has to be consistency. I mean, what you talked about in para number 3, it should not contradict what you're now talking about in para number 25. No, there has to be a thread of consistency running across the entire report that you prepare as a new corporate reporting framework known as integrated reporting. it must also have the quality and tenets of comparability. You should be able to compare it for the same company over a time from 1 year to next year to next year, and it should also be comparable from one company to that of the other company. So what are the IR contents? What all should you write in the integrated report? Broad headings. What is the organizational overview? That means, what does the organization do? How does it create and sustain value in the short, medium, and long term? You ask this question to the managing director, to the owner of companies, both in the public sector and private sector. I think it will be difficult for them to give a straight answer. You ask them, what does the organization do? आपका कंपनी क्या करता है? वो बोलता है हम ये प्रोडक्ट बनाते हैं, ये सर्विस प्रोवाइड करते हैं, all this, whatever, fine. How does your organization create value? Well, they'll not be clear as to what you are asking. Value means what? And then when you ask them, how do you create value in the short term, medium term, and long term? I mean, these are three very, very difficult questions for anyone, unless you have clarity about all these aspects. So while sitting down to write and prepare an integrated report, the consultant, the advisor, the management of the company, they must first understand the basic question: what is that their company does? How do you create value and sustain value for your company in the short, medium, and long term? What are the risks and opportunities before the company? What are the strategic objectives and how do you propose to achieve those objectives? What are the strategies that you have? That means where you are right now, where you want to go, how will you get there? Where the company is right now, positive economics. Where would you like to go? Normative economics. How will you go? What is the roadmap that you have? Governance and remuneration. How the company is being governed. What kind of corporate governance structure do you have? Do you follow the SEBI mandated guidelines under clause 49 of LODR, listing obligation and disclosure requirements of SEBI? Or you go one notch higher than that and you follow the Cadbury Committee recommendation or best practices in the corporate governance domain that the best companies of the world are following? And what kind of remuneration structure you have in terms of the gap or the range between the lowest employee's remuneration in the company and the person being paid the highest in the company? What is the kind of range that you have? Is it equitable? Is it based upon principles of equity and justice? Is it based upon some kind of gender discrimination? Is it sometimes based upon some kind of a caste discrimination? That should not be there. And then you have to report the performance. How has the organization performed against strategic objectives? And you also got to paint a picture of the future. What is the future outlook for the company that for which you are writing the integrated report? Simple enough, but not many people as of now are yet aware about the concept of integrated reporting. I don't think there have been very many papers which have been published, at least in the Indian context. I'm not too sure how many conferences, national, international, have happened so far in India. I think the topic itself is currently at its infancy. I, being a kind of a researcher, a learner over a period of last about 7-8 years, have been doing a lot of research, have been conducting some programs. I meet like-minded people in these conferences and seminars. I think there are a handful of people only as of now in India who are doing a lot of work in this area. And when we exchange our views, we also discuss why is it not picking up in India, even worldwide. Why is it not picking up at the expected pace? And generally we come across and discuss and agree that there are certain barriers to implementation of integrated reporting. First is the conceptual confusion. What is meant by integration? You know, when we talk about integrated reporting, the first word itself is integration. There's a lot of confusion among experts. What is meant by integration? Because integration means different things to different people. Then there are data availability difficulties. How do we decide how much weightage to give to a particular factor in the strategy? How do we define the threshold of materiality? For one company, materiality could be 5 crore amount. For another company, materiality could be 5 lakh amount. For another company, materiality threshold could be just about 5,000. How do we define the threshold limits for identifying the materiality aspect? And what should be the unit of analysis? Should we look at cost of production? Should we look at cost of servicing one customer? Should we look at cost of providing or saving one CO2 emission? Should we consider how many people have you provided employment? What should be the unit of analyzing the performance of a particular company? And then when we sit down to write an integrated report, no one single person can write that report all by himself. When I said I got associated with 2 companies to prepare their integrated report as an advisor, as a consultant, it's not that I have written that report. I only helped them, facilitated the entire process of writing the corporate report in the form of integrated reporting, but then it is multidisciplinary in nature. You got to involve a whole set of people working in the company, the HR people, the strategy people, the marketing people, supply chain people, the accountants, the finance people. You got to have all of them together writing a segment of their own function. And then everything has to be brought together in an integrated manner. That's where my role came in as an advisor, as a consultant. And another important factor, barrier to IR, is that as of now, there is no organization which regulates integrated reporting, and there is no process or structure of carrying out and third-party assurance. Just as you prepare the accounts for a company and these are audited by the statutory auditor so as to provide a reliability, credibility to your financial statement. As of now, there is no authority or association or a regulator in the entire world which mandates that integrated report should also be assured by a third party. But then all of us, real life, get it assured, get assurance done from a third party, maybe from Big Four, maybe from some other person, with a view to ensuring that the information which I'm providing in this integrated report is reliable, is credible, so that it must provide useful, relevant, timely information to the stakeholders of the company. And there are certain challenges. When I'm required to write a story about my company, I will write only the good things. I will not write about the bad things. And that's a challenge. How do I balance? Being transparent, being corporate disclosures have to be there. I'm writing an integrated report for my company, but real life challenge, reporting on thorny issues, things which are negative from the company's perspective. Do you dare? Do you have the courage to even write about that in your report or not? I mean, that's one of the important practical challenge that all of you will come across when you sometimes get associated with writing an integrated report. How do you ensure a holistic picture? Aggregation has to be done, CAGR has to be computed, longevity of the business has to be looked at. It's a complex exercise. How do you ensure what should be the threshold for materiality? How do you ensure a balanced reporting? How do you ensure your integrated report is structured in such a manner that it facilitates and enables comparison within sectors, within industries, and also across sectors, across industries? And you are taking responsibility for providing information to the stakeholders on performance, on potential and actual inputs throughout the value chain. Somebody can question you tomorrow. You created this integrated report. You said, this is my strategy. This is my business model. This is where the company is right now. This is where the company is going to go 10 years later. This is how we're going to take the company there. You got to own the responsibility. You are accountable. Somebody can challenge you tomorrow. Therefore, the information should be very, very carefully decided what should be there in the IR, what should not be there in the IR. For further readings, if you want to enhance your knowledge in this particular area, these are some of the areas from where you can get a lot of information. This is the official website of IIRC, International Integrated Reporting Council. Then various examples are also given for the companies which have actually implemented that. And you can also find out on these websites certain sample real-life integrated reporting reports of the various companies. You can also probably talk about, well, integrated reporting is something new. We've been talking about that for some time in terms of corporate social responsibility, environment performance, sustainability reporting. Everything is fine. Everything is more or less same, because what's in a name, whatever name you may call it, a rose is a rose. So you may call it environmental reporting, you may call it ESG reporting, you may call it corporate social responsibility reporting. Different words you can use, definitely. You can call it sustainability reporting. Everything is almost the same. The whole idea in the new emerging dimensions of corporate reporting in 21st century is to provide adequate, reliable, credible information to the stakeholders, enabling them to make decisions whether they would like to make investment into your company or not, and when to pull out their money. This you must do by making a complete story of your financial as well as non-financial parameters and factors. The way forward, in board meetings, integrated reporting and sustainability reporting will be discussed more often going forward. Some of the companies have already started putting it as an agenda in the board meeting. Many more companies going forward will definitely have to follow the suit. Boards of directors will pay more attention in future on the accuracy and reliability of integrated reports, of course. Companies will take a systematic approach to integrating stakeholders' interest into decision making. So when you evaluate a project on capital budgeting, you've got to identify how will it impact the stakeholders in the market from environmental perspective, societal perspective, governance perspective. Companies need to communicate openly, clearly, effectively how they plan to grow, create value in a sustainable way. There is an imperative need for the companies to connect the dots better in their reporting so that the balance between risk and opportunity is clearer. And all this falls within the domain of the future finance leaders. The future finance leaders that you learned, knowledgeable faculty members are preparing today, they are going to be the leaders in championing the cause of changing dimensions of finance and also the corporate reporting changes which are taking place under 21st century. Integrated reporting is the way of the future. There's no stopping. The wave has already started moving. More and more companies, day in and day out, year by year, will join the bandwagon and they will start preparing integrated reporting. There's no doubt about that. And there is also no doubt about that the message is very clear. The companies which start working on the concept of corporate reporting by integrated reporting in 21st century, these are the companies which will survive. These are the companies which will sustain in the marketplace. Other companies will find it difficult to be able to compete in a highly competitive VUCA dynamic business world. So the message is shape up or ship out. The companies have to take a call whether they would like to remain in the market for the next 100, 150, 200 years, whether they would like to create a sustainable business model. If yes, you got to focus on integrated reporting. If your ideas are otherwise, then it's up to you. But the message is very clear, shape up or ship out. Thank you very much. That's where I close my presentation on changing dimensions of business, including the changes required in the corporate reporting in the 21st century. I'm so thankful to the organizers of this particular FDP program for giving me an opportunity of interacting with so learned, so knowledgeable faculty members from Pan India, maybe international. It will be a pleasure to keep in touch with you all, sir. I am very well connected with many of the educational institutions Pan India. I regularly deliver guest lectures, also deliver industry perspective lectures, also do student mentoring, also do faculty mentoring. I would like to and love to be associated with some of you wherever I can contribute in whatever little way I can. Thank you so very much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Sunil sir, for your wonderful deliberation and so energetic deliberation.
Namaskar, sir.
So,
thank you so much.
Yeah. So,
any
sir,
questions, I'll be pleased to take maybe one or two questions if time permits.
Exactly. Exactly, and I must appreciate your effort and management of time that you have just completed
Yes,
on
yes,
time.
yes.
So, and this is a very sensitive time of the day, the
Thank you so much.
pre-lunch portion. So
Yes,
I
sir. Yes, sir.
understand,
Yes, sir.
and all the participants have logged in from 9:30. So
Yes.
we can have one or two questions,
Sure.
as our resource person said.
No problem.
So, dear participants, if you have any question, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question to Dr. Gupta.
I will share my presentation, which you can share with the participants.
Okay, we
Yes,
will.
I will do it by the evening. Yeah.
And sir, we have the recording of the session as per
Okay,
AIT
that's-
norms.
That's
And
great.
these links will be uploaded on YouTube, and the YouTube links will be shared with
Oh,
the
that's great.
participants.
That's great. That's great.
This is a part of the AICT.
Arnab Sen sir has raised a hand. Arnab Sen sir, yes, your question, please.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. Yes.
So at the outset, it was really very wonderful to listen to you.
Thank you so much,
and with
sir.
so much of energy and with so much of information that you delivered here to us. So I'm just really locked in the horns of dilemma on one particular area. That there's a lot of sensitization that has happened in terms of ESG. It has happened in terms of business responsibility reporting. And starting from 2009, when the Ministry of Corporate Affairs stated the voluntary guidelines on CSR, from there to 2009 to 2019, when SEBI mandated top 1,000 listed entities to file business responsibility reporting. That's really a brilliant thing that what India is doing on one side. On the other side, I stand very confused when I see 2014, we ranked 142 in terms of ease of doing business. 2021, and I'm specifically talking of the NDA government regime, 2021 is our rank stands 63 out of 190 economies across the globe. And out of 190 economies, that really makes a lot of sense. But what the confusion that I'm raising out here is that there has been a serious decategorization of industries from severe, impacting the environment in a severe way to a lesser impact industries. The state pollution control boards, they have been asked to shed their autonomy. The audit requirements have been relaxed. So I think, somewhere is there a confusion with the direction? Because in one place, MCA wants people to be more responsible, companies to be more responsible. On the other hand, there seems to be a very different direction through which we are passing in terms of the ease of doing business. So what is your opinion on that?
I understand that. Yeah, sure, sir. So starting with the NVG guidelines of M3 of 2009, which you rightly pointed out, subsequently, Clause 55 got added to LODR, listing obligations and disclosure requirements of SEBI, where companies were required to provide annual business responsibility report. And now, at least on a voluntary basis, SEBI has mandated for top 500 companies by market cap to prepare integrated report, wherein only 46 companies are actually doing that. But the point is, entire focus of the world today is on ESG, and it's going to become louder and louder in coming years. I mean, the voice is going to become louder and louder in coming years, and India being also so closely intertwined with the rest of the world because of its globalization cannot remain unaffected. So if a butterfly flutters anywhere in the world, it's bound to create ripples everywhere. So even though it's a challenge, how do we comply with various pollution control norms? And pollution is not only about air, water kind of thing, but we also talk about pollution of mind. I think that's where clarity has to be brought about at the board level, at the finance leaders level, that these are merely the rules and regulations, but actually we have to go beyond the rules and regulations in terms of letter. We have to move to spirit and thus try and find out the best possible ways of making this planet a better place to live in, leaving the planet the way it has been inherited by us from our forefathers, and living it the same way for the future generations as well. That's a challenge which has to be faced by the leaders, and faster we do it, the way we are able to respond to these kind of challenges, good it will be for all of us, for the entire world, for the entire humanity. But the question and your thought process is very well articulated. That there is definitely a bit of a confusion and also a bit of a complexity between the two aspects, between asking for an agenda for environmental protection, but at the same time, companies not being very serious about looking at this as kind of a sustainable agenda. Point well taken.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. But at least, the better part of the story is that the academic world has taken up this issue of sustainability. And if you see majority
sir.
of the
Yes.
conferences which are coming up currently from the academic world, they're based on sustainability and SDG.
Yes,
So I
sir.
think at least the academic world has started thinking on it.
Absolutely.
maybe
There are quite a
they
few
bring it in some
conferences have happened.
Yeah.
I've been invited as a speaker in quite a few
Yeah,
of them.
sure.
I'm aware
Sure.
about what's happening. Yeah.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Das Gupta, please, sir. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Such a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Really, we enjoyed it. And actually, on every point, actually, we could understand that
Thank
how
you
much
so much.
experience you are having. And really, I think, we hope that our this organizing this faculty development program for participants pan India, so all will be benefited with the speeches like yours. So we really, from the Department of Business Administration of the University of Burdwan, we are we are gratitude to you. We
Thank
express
you
our
so much,
gratitude
sir.
to you
Thank
and
you very
thank
much.
you for such a nice
And it will
presentation.
be a
And,
pleasure to-
obviously, sure,
It
sir.
will be a pleasure to
Obviously,
interact
the
with all of you.
participants might be having some questions, but due to paucity of time,
Okay.
and since it's going to be this session is going to end, so naturally, if you have any question or if you want some sort of interaction, then you, as Sir has given the contact number and email, so you can contact him.
So I would request the organizers to kindly share the contact details of all the participants so that we can all remain in
Yes.
touch, going
Yes.
forward as well, and exchange our views on various topics.
Okay, sure. And hope we'll get your cooperation and support in future
Absolutely,
also.
sir. Anytime, sir. Anytime.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much.
That was
Thank
nice of you. And then we are coming to the end of this session, the technical session 2 of day 1. So now this is the lunch time. So we'll be meeting again on this platform at 2:30 p.m. Okay. So thank you all
Thank
for
you.
your presence. Thank you.